While wandering around a temple, Win stumbled upon a business opportunity. He discovered that the bustling temple collected up to 20 million Thai baht in donations daily, amounting to 7.3 billion per year. Suddenly, he had a wild idea. What if he could divert these donations into his own pockets? What joy that would be! After researching extensively overnight, he excitedly called his two friends the next day. Gathering them, Win began planning their future business empire. This thriving temple averaged 30 billion Thai baht in annual income. Since it was a sacred Buddhist site, the state paid little attention to where the donations went. As long as the diversion wasn't too obvious, everything would be legitimate and legal. If the three could manage a temple, they would quickly amass wealth that would last 3 lifetimes. In Thailand, a country filled with faith, those seeking psychological comfort preferred contributing to temples over expensive and scientific psychologists, building merit for themselves. The wealthy found it easy and were more than willing to scatter their money around for peace of mind. Facing their last lifeline, the trio clung to this new plan as they had previously invested heavily in a gaming company. However, due to a traitorous technician, their stock plummeted by 90% overnight. The young men were left broke and faced the pressure of a 25 million Thai baht high-interest loan. When they were on the verge of bankruptcy, the loan company's lawyers called, demanding the original 200% interest plus an additional 20% to be paid within a month. Now, unable to contact the technician, they realized the recent attack on their newly launched game was undoubtedly a conspiracy between the technician and the loan company. From the beginning to the end, they only wanted to earn interest on the money. But the three powerless young men could only suffer in silence. That night, a group of thugs broke into Win's house. Deer saw Win being brutally beaten when she received a video call. She and Game rushed over, but couldn't find Win. At that moment, Win appeared with cleaning tools in hand and stopped his friends from calling the police, because the operators of the high-interest loan company were lawless thugs beyond police control. Now, the three young men faced the daunting task of repaying 8 million in interest in a month, feeling as if the sky had fallen. Deer and Game dared not speak of this at home. However, the next day, Win disappeared, and their company's windows were maliciously smashed. Deer and Game became extremely anxious, like ants on a hot pan. Meanwhile, Win returned to his mother, claiming that the scars on his body were from a motorcycle fall. His mother was busy counting money for the temple and did not probe further. Suddenly, Win asked his mother if he could go abroad with her. However, she countered by asking what they should do about his father, who had mysteriously disappeared when Win was very young. The police had never found any clues, and his mother had since placed her last hopes in her faith, spending her days in religious devotion. Influenced by this, Win watched his mother finish counting the temple's funds and prepared to move 2 bags of money to the car. Tempted by the sight, Win volunteered to help carry the funds to the car. Afterward, he and his mother went to the temple, where they were stunned by the numbers on the temple's LED screen. So he called his 2 friends to start exploring the market and operational modes of major temples. The conclusion was that Win's proposal was absolutely feasible. However, the current issue was how to build a new temple, which required both money and time, and there were various regulations from the Buddhist administration. They wondered how to select a temple from the tens of thousands in Thailand that could be utilized for their purposes. They ruled out the large temples in urban areas that were well-maintained and popular, as they had too many authority figures and were often managed by boards that already had profit-sharing arrangements, leaving no room for 3 young people. Deer suggested looking in the suburbs, but they found that temples were overly concentrated there. Near one residential area, there were 4 or 5 temples, creating intense competition. Temples in slightly better locations faced the issue of needing major renovations due to dilapidation, which would require a high investment. They decisively gave up. Some abbots saw through their tricks and directly scolded the 3 for their sins. After running around all morning and achieving nothing, they were quite disheartened. Game even began to speak despairingly. Win said if all else failed, they should at least try to accumulate some merit. At that moment, the usually silent deer suddenly asked to stop the car. She had spotted a hidden temple by the roadside. Although somewhat dilapidated, the buildings were intact and only needed repainting to be functional. The large area hinted at its past prosperity. Hence, the three wanted to use the excuse of seeking blessings to approach and discuss cooperation, but they only encountered the volunteer Tang in the main hall, who was surprised by the young people's arrival and thus did not reveal the abbot's whereabouts. Unwilling to give up, Game decided to donate money as a pretext to pry information from Tang. However, after receiving the donation with a smile, Tang simply said he would handle the transfer, leaving Game with no choice but to prepare to leave with his friends. Yet, they noticed Tang had left the temple before them. They hurriedly followed and saw Tang return home, change his clothes, and head out for the night. Due to Game's poor tracking skills, Tang noticed them halfway and shook them off. Fortunately, Win had taken down Tang's phone number. After calling him, Win heard loud background music over the phone and deduced that Tang might have gone to a nearby bar. As expected, they found Tang's car in the parking lot of a nearby bar. When they entered the bar, Tang became thoroughly enraged. He ran to the stage, grabbed a microphone, and demanded to know why they were following him. Then, he stormed over to them angrily. As Game and Deer were about to back off, Win pushed an envelope containing 40,000 Thai baht towards Tang, stating they merely wanted to discuss a collaboration. Tang's expression softened immediately upon understanding it was about temple business. They wanted to manage the temple operations to enhance the reputation of Pluang Temple and profit from it. Seeing Tang somewhat moved, Win outlined the terms of collaboration. Tang's role would be to provide suggestions and handle matters they couldn't openly manage, earning 40,000 Thai baht a month and a final 5% cut from the profits. Upon hearing this, Tang launched into a tirade, and Win, thinking he was refusing the deal, started to retract the envelope. Tang quickly stopped him. He was just trying to negotiate a better deal. Eventually, they compromised, agreeing on a 10% commission for Tang. For instance, if there was 10 million baht in donations, Tang would earn 1 million baht. The first step was for Tang to help them gain access to the temple and persuade the abbot. The next day, the trio brought many supplies in the name of donation and were introduced to the abbot by Tang. When the abbot asked how they planned to proceed, Game took out a slideshow to explain, but was abruptly stopped by the abbot. In a tense moment, the abbot apologetically stated he was too old to understand such things and entrusted Tang with full responsibility. Things went smoother than the group had anticipated. Subsequently, they started a routine of renovating the temple by day and discussing plans at a bar by night. Deer negotiated the lowest prices with the renovation company to refurbish the temple. Game withdrew his retirement savings early, and Win sold his stocks worth $80,000. With the young trio's financial efforts, Pluang Temple was quickly revitalized. Tang also deceived the abbot into signing the project agreement using facial recognition technology. To cater to modern spending habits, the youths set up payment codes at the temple. Once everything was ready, Tang suggested promoting Pluang Temple during an important Buddhist festival. They chose an upcoming date for the event. However, on the day, only a few worshippers showed up, mainly attracted by the free water and bringing their children to play with water guns, turning the temple into a playground, a stark contrast to what the young trio had envisioned. While discussing the matter, Win suddenly asked Deer if the situation reminded her of her ex-boyfriend. It turned out that the celebrity endorsing the drink they were having was Deer's ex-boyfriend. Suddenly, Deer realized they could leverage the star effect by inviting a well-known monk. They decided to invite a famous monk to Pluang Temple to teach Buddhism. However, nowadays some monks combine short videos with their chants, reciting scriptures in the first half and selling products via live streams in the second half. After dismissing these unreliable monks, they set their sights on a young mixed-race monk, Master Dong Yuan, even though his fee was high. Win and Game decided to travel out of town to invite him for the sake of fame, while Deer stayed behind to manage the flea market at the temple to attract visitors. Win and Game faced a major problem. Master Dong Yuan's schedule was very tight, and they couldn't book an appointment with him anytime soon. Out of necessity, Game brought drinks to the ladies listening to Master Dong Yuan's teachings and chatted with them, successfully getting into their inner circle. Since inviting the monk was proving difficult, Game also missed his girlfriend's birthday. The next day, Win and Game hurried to the pavilion to listen to Master Dong Yuan, only to find that he had been replaced. Game belatedly realized he had left his phone on airplane mode. When he switched it back, he learned that Master Dong Yuan had already gone to Bangkok for a show. As they were about to leave, they were captivated by Fra Don's engaging interpretation of Buddhism and his guidance into meditation. Even the profit-focused Win and Game were drawn into the tranquil atmosphere. After Fra Don finished his lecture, they immediately decided to ask him to replace Master Dong Yuan. While helping an old lady carry something heavy, Win took the opportunity to learn more about Fra Don and found out he had long wanted to build a meditation pavilion, but was stalled due to funding issues. Seizing the opportunity, Win sketched the design of the pavilion and informed Deer about it. They planned to use fundraising as a pretext to build meditation pavilions in both temples, thereby inviting Fra Don out of retirement. On their second visit, Win brought the design plans to the abbot. After hearing that they wanted to build a meditation pavilion to bring Master Fra Don out for 3 months, the abbot had no objections, stating it only needed Fra Don's approval. After sincerely thanking the abbot, using their persuasive skills, they finally convinced Fra Don. When Win and Game returned to Puran Temple, they found that Deer had made the place very lively. She had added a singing stage to the flea market to provide a platform for visitors to showcase their vocal talents. Upon arriving at the temple, they first visited the abbot and, after receiving his approval, Fra Don settled down at Puran Temple. Following a photo shoot with the photographer for promotional purposes, the 3 young people and Tang began to promote the event in their own ways. On the day of Fra Don's lecture, many visitors came to the temple because of his reputation. Win and others set up a live stream from the back rows. Deer also inquired about the visitors' impressions nearby, and many praised Fra Don's expertise and handsome appearance, which gradually increased his fame. Seeing an opportunity, Teng thought about making more money, even considering charging extra for parking. Win quickly persuaded him to restrain himself, reminding him of the upcoming 10% profit share, which eventually satisfied Teng. That night, he began to spend lavishly in a bar, making his friends envious. Knowing that everyone was struggling financially, Teng offered them a chance to make money. Meanwhile, Win followed the abbot and found him reminiscing with a monk. The abbot introduced Master Aik, a former monk of Puran Temple, who had gone away for studies and had just returned upon graduating. Seeing the highly educated Aik, Win looked at him with a scrutinizing gaze, a bad feeling arising within him. The efforts of the 3 young people were gradually paying off as Puran Temple's fame spread, attracting more and more visitors. The money trees for hanging cash offerings were running out of space, prompting Win to order several more. To help his friends financially, Taiyang even arranged for them to undergo ordination ceremonies, becoming nominal monks of Puran Temple. Thanks to the sponsorship from Assemblyman Ai, Win and others did not object too much to this. Game, carrying a bag of money, first exchanged a portion for tokens, then took the rest to the attorney of a loan shark company to repay the installment loan and interest. However, the attorney was very dissatisfied as the money Game brought was not even enough to cover the interest. Now he still had a debt of 45.02 million Thai baht to repay. Heavy-hearted, Game returned to the temple only to find that the fake monks and the other monks were fighting. Game was accidentally injured in the scuffle. Seeing this, Ike immediately rang the bell to alert everyone and waited for both sides to calm down. It was then revealed that the fake monks, being people associated with Tang, were often invited out for religious services, so the true monks felt that their business was being stolen. Ike warned them that focusing too much on profit could lead to their expulsion from the monkhood if fights broke out again. The fake monks were intimidated and had to swallow their complaints. Then Ike scheduled religious duties for everyone and, after consulting with the abbot, established some rules for the monks. Taiyang thought he could let the matter slide, but Ike began paying him special attention. After taking over the donation money from Taiyang, Ike had Game audit the books. While discussing the matter with the fake monks at night, Taiyang decided to lay low, but stopped talking when he sensed someone nearby. The three urgently needed to profit from the donations to repay their loans quickly, but angered the superior of the abbot of Puran Temple due to sponsorship issues, leading to continuous troubles at the temple. First, thugs created noise at the entrance, disturbing the visitors, and then sneaked in to knock over the offerings. Ike realized this might be sabotage from a competitor. The next day, after seeing the temple's promotional posters deliberately vandalized, Ike was even more convinced that the mastermind was the abbot of Manathong Temple, who had previously been sponsored by Assemblywoman Ai, now supporting Puran Temple, thus sparking a feud between the two temples. To appease Manathong Temple, Ike decided to waive the donation fees temporarily. However, Game could not let this go and learned of the Manathong Temple abbot's scandal, his fondness for close chats with young boys, from a temple worker's notebook. Game decided to retaliate by spreading rumors about the abbot of Manathong Temple. He bought the notebook with money and then went to a popular internet cafe, booking the entire place with 20,000 Thai baht to hire online addicts as a troll army to like, comment, and share the rumors about the Manathong Temple abbot. By nightfall, the abbot's reputation was ruined, with some even vandalizing Manathong Temple. Game successfully used their own tactics against them. In the following events, the incense offerings at Puran Temple grew more robust, with Assemblywoman Ai leading the charge by donating 999,999 Thai baht. While Win was thrilled with the skyrocketing numbers in the account, trouble soon followed. Ike approached proactively, asking to see the temple's bank book and requesting Win to print out the donation list. Suddenly, Game noticed a vehicle from Manathong Temple arriving at Puran Temple. He quickly called for Taiyang, only to find he was not in the temple. By the time Taiyang reached, the abbot of Manathong Temple was ready to leave. The abbot of Puran Temple personally gathered everyone in a room, first thanking everyone for revitalizing Puran Temple, then expressing a desire to sever ties. At night, while patrolling, Ike suddenly heard the sound of something heavy falling in the abbot's room. When Ike entered, he found the abbot lying unconscious on the floor, with Win looking on in shock. Due to the abbot's sudden illness, Ike had to take close care of him, which led him to entrust the temple operations to Win and others. Deer and Game, who should have been happy, noticed Win's odd reaction and couldn't help but feel uneasy. After the abbot was out of life-threatening danger, he was quickly sent back to Puran Temple. It was also time to send Fra Dan back to his original temple. After bidding farewell, as Fra Dan was about to leave, Deer stepped forward, hoping Fra Dan would stay. Ultimately, Fra Dan hesitated for a moment and then silently got into the car and left. Game, using the money collected from the festival offerings, engaged in some currency trading, half in Tether and half in US dollars. Afterwards, Game visited the representative lawyer and paid off all the interest on the loans and part of the principal. The lawyer, curious about Game's money-making methods, couldn't help but ask, but Game outright refused to answer. At this time, Fra Dan returned to his original temple and sought forgiveness from the abbot. However, haunted by recurring images in his mind, he even misspoke while reciting Buddhist scriptures. At this time, the three partners' debts were somewhat alleviated. Unaware of the situation, Teng thought all was lost and secretly engaged in illegal trading within the temple. He was caught red-handed by Ike on patrol. The next day, due to Ike's report, Teng and some fake monks were all arrested at once, plunging Puran Temple into a huge scandal. Seeing the situation, the three partners felt nothing but headaches, but were unaware that they were already under someone's watchful eye. After the police conducted a thorough investigation, Puran Temple was shunned by everyone. Fra Dawn, upon learning of this from the abbot, couldn't help but worry. Because a video of the police arresting Tang was circulating online, Puran Temple was once again thrust into the spotlight. At this time, Ike brought some good news. Thanks to his efforts, the abbot still retained control over the temple's operations. The three young people then began trying to find ways to attract worshippers again. One evening, Win noticed a cat's necklace and suddenly had an idea to have the temple sell amulets to attract visitors. Deer immediately realized that they could use the fame of Puran Temple to craft a story to garner more attention. Now, with the temple in the spotlight of public opinion, this was undoubtedly an opportunity for them. In this era where any publicity is good publicity, they decided to use the beehive under a Buddha statue to create a story. At this time, needing a famous monk to perform rituals and promote, Fra Dawn, after much inner conflict, decided to switch sects and stay at Puran Temple long-term. Win then appointed him as the monk to promote the amulets. Deer specifically came to check the facts and, after getting a positive response, Fra Dawn proactively asked about the amulet project. Seizing the opportunity, Deer invited Fra Dawn to travel together to collect sacred items for the amulets. Deer was responsible for filming the entire process, leaving Game, who had become a monk's assistant smoothly during this time, to handle temple affairs. No problem. Along the journey during a fuel stop, Deer felt guilty about constantly using Fra Dawn and offered to help build a meditation pavilion. However, Win rejected the idea as he was solely focused on repaying his debts. At this time, Game took over Tung's duties and gathered the money from the donation box. Suddenly, a strange man approached and couldn't help but ask Game, a rich second generation, why he would choose to stay in a temple collecting money. Wasn't that strange? Game momentarily panicked, but quickly regained his composure. Seeing the man, he quickly turned and walked away. When Game went to pay off the loan again, because he paid so little, the lawyer pointed a gun at his head. Amid his terrified screams, water squirted out from the pistol. Afterwards, the unreasonable lawyer raised the principal and interest to the amount due before any payments were made. Seeing the outstanding balance of 43 million baht on the bill, Game could only grit his teeth and swallow his frustration. However, just as Game stepped out with the bill, he encountered the police who had been following him. It turned out that the police suspected that the three of them were colluding with the fugitive Tang, possibly using the temple to launder money and traffic drugs, so they had started an investigation. In order to ascertain the police's identity, Game deliberately crashed into their car and later used the insurance company to learn their intentions. Suddenly, Game received a call from his sister about their grandfather's fall. He had to rush home, but fortunately his grandfather had only suffered a fracture and was not in serious trouble. Seizing the opportunity, Game decided to ask his father for a loan. However, as soon as he mentioned 10 million, his father outright refused. It turned out that Game's uncle was the major shareholder of the family, and they all depended on the uncle for their livelihood. Meanwhile, Fra Dawn, in an attempt to obtain the last sacred item, met privately with a head monk who was reluctant to receive them and ended up getting beaten. Ultimately, the three had no choice but to abandon their visit and return to the temple disheartened. Seeing this, Game wanted to ask what happened, but Win was not in the mood to respond, as he was busy thinking about how to create the amulets. After parking the car, Deer stepped forward to help, but at that moment, Game shared his recent ordeals. He felt utterly helpless, but Win had no inclination to attend to Game's emotions. Game nearly died from a gunshot, but when he told his friends, they were too busy with their own tasks and paid him no mind, which upset him enough to leave. As he awaited the production of amulets, their dismal sales only deepened his depression. Win remained silent, adding to the tension. Suddenly, Game received a text showing that someone had taken photos of his niece, escalating his worries about his family's safety to an extreme. Consequently, Game approached Win, urging him to cut manufacturing expenses and find a way to repay the loan quickly. Game even considered consulting so-called experts to help sell the amulets. However, Win suggested he had other plans and even wanted to increase production investment, which completely frustrated Game. Accusing Win of making him bear the brunt of the loan, Win retorted that if it weren't for Game's initial suggestion about the game tokens, they wouldn't have blindly dealt with high-interest loans. This confrontation led to a complete fallout between them. Caught in the middle, Deer felt exhausted. That night, Deer's friend, for whom she had designed a wedding venue, wanted to express her gratitude and introduce Deer to a job in scene design. At that moment, Win sent a message. With a moment's hesitation, Deer rushed to the address given by Win, where he was interviewing a firefighter living on the edge. After the interview, while Deer was still confused, she heard a broadcast from the fire station about a major accident involving a bus and a pickup truck. The firefighter rushed to the scene, and Deer followed, overtaking police and ambulance vehicles through drifting to get to the front line of the accident. Deer and Win found a secluded corner at the site and rescued the truck driver. Win attempted to hang an amulet around the driver's neck unnoticed, but hesitated and missed the opportunity. As he was apologizing for his guilt, Deer pushed the truck into the river, determined to stay on top of the case. Afterward, the two went to the hospital and told the rescued truck driver about the incident of the truck falling into the river. The driver remembered them saving him, but when Win took out an amulet and suggested the driver promote it during a press interview the next day, promising him 200,000 Thai baht to buy a new truck, the driver lost control of his emotions. He knocked the amulet to the floor, revealing that he had lost sensation in his legs and feared permanent disability, ending his truck driving career. Win and Deer were deeply affected and left the hospital regretful as Win contemplated the new orders he had set. However, during the night rounds, a nurse noticed the beautifully crafted amulet on the floor, picked it up, and placed it devoutly on the table. Fortunately, the driver woke up later to find he could move his toes, and seeing the amulet on the table, attributed his recovery to its powers, treating it as a treasure. The next day, during an interview with reporters, the driver firmly believed that the amulet had blessed him and showcased it to the journalists. Seeing this, Deer and Win decided to fulfill their promise and give him the money as thanks. Before they left, the driver stopped Win, asking him to procure another amulet for his wife. Following this, Win hurriedly ordered more amulets, and driven by public opinion, the amulets became regarded as treasures. When Game saw the news at home, he was incredulous at Win's success. Win had even employed a scarcity marketing tactic, launching a new line of amulets that quickly became priceless and highly coveted. Visitors to Pulin Temple were willing to pay significant sums for peace of mind, even queuing up long lines, and more people believed the amulets could bring good luck and began promoting the temple spontaneously. To build momentum, an acrobat hung an amulet on a chicken and then shot at it. The chicken walked away unharmed. Many industry insiders valued the craftsmanship of the amulets at up to 100,000 Thai baht, which fueled even more frenzied buying. The temple's daily cash intake was so high that Deer had to use a money counter from day until night. They now had enough money to pay off their debts. Deer hoped Win would contact Game, but he outright refused. Meanwhile, Game discovered his own family had bought amulets and found it absurd that they believed in such superstitions. However, both his father and grandfather reprimanded him over the amulet. Feeling frustrated, Game suddenly received a mysterious phone call. Arriving at the agreed location, he was met by Taeyang from the Wolf Fox gang, desperately asking Game for help with 500,000 Thai baht. Game, feeling sympathetic, agreed, but did not realize this was just the beginning of a nightmare. The next day, after Game had gone shopping, Taeyang approached him again, this time asking for 3 million. Just as Game was about to refuse, Taeyang pulled out a gun. Game had no choice but to confess that all the money had been converted into cryptocurrency. He then persuaded Taeyang to go with him to a place where he could verify this fact and even found a safe place for him to stay. Meanwhile, the police investigating the amulets threatened the truck driver with the drugs found in his vehicle to tell the truth. After making a large profit, Deer felt utterly exhausted. To her dismay, Win wanted to continue expanding the business, which made her feel even more tired. To repay their loan, Deer proactively contacted Game to get the repayment details. Win consulted a lawyer and paid off all the loans. Before leaving, the lawyer slipped his business card into Win's pocket, hoping he would seek his help again in the future. However, Win had no fondness for this person who had betrayed him. During the night, Game secretly visited the temple and asked who Taeyang was working for. The abbot slowly raised his hand and pointed to a photo. At that moment, Aika walked in, interrupting them. Game, seeing no other option, disclosed his encounter with Taeyang. At the same time, Win felt Deer's fatigue and decided to end everything. He planned to take his mother and leave this place of trouble. His mother insisted on taking Win to Pulan Temple to pray and even bought him an amulet. Win wanted to return it, but his mother firmly believed it would keep them safe. Meanwhile, Deer learned of Fra Don's desire to leave the monkhood, which piqued her curiosity about his reasons. Unexpectedly, Fra Don confessed his feelings to her. Unable to accept this, Deer was ready to leave when the police arrived with a warrant and arrested both her and Win. At the same time, Game, carrying money to visit Taeyang, discovered that Taeyang had been murdered. Terrified, Game immediately fled. At this time, Game received a message from Deer stating that the police had raided the temple. Now Deer, Win, and Fra Don were all invited to the police station for questioning. Faced with the police's questions, Deer declared she would wait for her lawyer. Win, on the other hand, directly pulled out the lawyer's business card from his pocket, the one specializing in high-interest loans. The police went to Pulan Temple and demanded to see the temple's financial records and the committee member list. The abbot was already unconscious and unable to provide any significant information. Following the committee list, the police found Game's family home. Initially, it was Game who had made donations to Pulan Temple under his family's name. Confronting his unknowing family, the police disclosed that Game was suspected of laundering money for drug traffickers. His sister hurriedly called Game to tip him off. Faced with his sister's questions, Game could only hang up the phone. During the police questioning, Fra Don consistently claimed that he was only promoting Buddhism and spoke in defense of the 3 young people who had supported him unconditionally. Even so, Fra Don was unwilling to say anything that could harm Deer. "They have always been using you," he was told. "All of them?" he asked. He was not afraid of the police investigating the temple's projects. The foresighted Win had already had Game convert a large amount of their profits into cryptocurrency, making it difficult for the police to trace. The police had no choice but to present an audio recording of the driver's accusation and the hospital's CCTV footage. However, Win was unimpressed. Fra Don, seeing Deer waiting outside alone, asked her if the police's allegations were true, to which Deer guiltily apologized. Win insisted on waiting for his lawyer's arrival, leaving the police with no leverage. The police suspected there was someone smarter and more sinister manipulating everything. Meanwhile, Game, on the run, suddenly received a text from Aika asking him to come to the temple to discuss Tung's matter. With no options left and risking police detection, Game sneaked into the temple. However, upon meeting, Aika immediately inquired about how to deal with Tung's body, shocking Game. Clearly, Aika was involved in Tung's death. Faced with such evil, Game was at a loss for what to do. On the other hand, there was a turn of events for Win. His lawyer's network was so powerful that even the chief of police had to relent. He reprimanded the officers handling the case and subsequently released Win. As the two argued over the incident, the boss behind their lawyer arranged for someone to pick up Win and Deer. Game was already waiting for them. The mastermind behind everything turned out to be Counselor Aika. Game had agreed to help manage a larger temple for Aika to secure his friend's release. Impressed by their capabilities, Aika only required them to agree to expand her amulet business significantly. "You have a fantastic brand vision, even better than the famous temples," Aika confessed. She also admitted that helping Win and Deer escape was because Game agreed to continue making money for her. Then Aika's henchmen brought in a severed hand as a demonstration, Tong's severed hand. Seeing this, Win vomited on the spot. Under the threat of power, the trio had no choice but to submit and protect themselves. After Win was freed, he hurried home only to find the police waiting at his doorstep, informing him of the reason behind his father's disappearance. If Win wanted to uncover the truth, he would have to help the police investigate political corruption and private drug dealings. The police only needed Win's agreement to deliver the information about the mastermind behind it all. After the police left, Win returned home, where his mother refused to face him directly. Back at his place, Game faced his family's accusations. At that moment, Deer was preparing to flee using her American passport. She ignored Win's calls. Helpless, Win accidentally knocked over a water glass. As he was wiping it up, he picked up a small handcraft made by his father and suddenly realized his father's words from years ago might have held a double meaning.